Christ almighty! What the fuck's going on out there tonight? Are you hurt? Alright, which one of you bitches shat on my dress?
It's time to delve into yet another interesting idiosyncratic example of Australian cinema. Pride Month edition. A couple months ago, we talked about Picnic at Hanging Rock, Australia's most popular and well-regarded movie from the film boom. Australia became extremely proud of their film industry, and during the 1970s and 1980s, Australia's film industry boomed, creating a new wave which morphed into the exploitation genre. Stefan Elliott was all over the 1980s boom, working on Australian TV movies and low-budget fare, as an assistant director most of the time, either second or third unit. In 1993, Stefan Elliott got his directorial debut with the film Frauds, an extremely low-budget film starring Phil Collins as a psychotic insurance adjuster who blackmails a couple played by Hugo Weaving and Josephine Burns, who accidentally killed their friend during a bad prank.
She's got nothing to do with it, Roland. Leave her out of it.
Oh, but she's been stealing, Jonathan. And all little girls who steal deserve a good spanking. I gather you're up to something. Where, may I ask, are you?
It's not exactly popular and largely ignored, but was allowed into Cannes in 1993 to compete. At Cannes, while Frauds had been in production, Stefan Elliott and his producer, Stuart Quinn, began to search for producers for a new project. That was tonight's film, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Hey, let's pack the drag away. You take the lunch and tea, I'll take the ecstasy. Fuck off, you silly queer, I'm getting out of here. A desert holiday, hip, 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 hooray. Why?
He looked all over Cannes for a producer unsuccessfully before finding the British producer Michael Hamlin at Polygram, who got them a deal to co-finance the movie for 2.7 million Australian dollars with the Australian Film Finance Corporation, the government agency in Australia which had also co-financed Frauds. Priscilla stars Hugo Weaving as Tick, who performs in drag as Mitzi Del Bra, a very young Guy Pearce, then a local TV actor mostly, as Adam Whiteley or Felicia Jolly Goodfellow. Guy Pearce was famous in Australia for being on the soap opera Neighbours, and within a couple of years of Priscilla taking off, he'd be fielding calls to Hollywood, starting with LA Confidential. And Terrence Stamp as an older transgender woman named Bernadette. None of these actors were the first choices for their roles. The rules set up by the Australian Film Finance Corporation state that only one non-Australian actor would be allowed. The first non-Australian actor cast was Rupert Everett as Tick, with Guy Pearce's soap opera co-star Jason Donovan as Adam. They did not get along and the casting was scrapped. Hugo Weaving was brought in as local talent as he had worked with Stefan before. For Bernadette, they reached out to Tim Curry, John Cleese, and then Tony Curtis, before casting Terrence Stamp as their one non-Aussie actor. Their odyssey begins in Sydney, Australia's most populous city, which had a thriving LGBTQ community. Drag shows have been performed at gay bars in Sydney since the late 1950s, quickly becoming known, at least briefly, as drag capital of the world. The first Sydney cabaret troupe was Les Girls, which in this film's backstory, Bernadette was a member of.
We all sit around mindlessly slagging off that vile stinkhole of a city. But in its own strange way, it takes care of us. I don't know if that ugly wall of suburbia has been put there to stop them getting in or us getting out.
Sydney is a safe space for these queer performers. In 1983, even as many people in Sydney's queer community began to die from AIDS, a lesbian business entrepreneur named Dawn O'Donnell was quickly expanding her gay-lesbian drag bar empire, buying a long list of venues including the Imperial Hotel. This is where our three performers are when the movie starts and ends. However, when Tick gets an urgent call from his estranged secret wife,
Tick, darling, it's for you.
Hello.
Ding dong, Avon calling. Howdy, sunshine. Long time no hear.
Where?
Emergency ward A.
Mr. Belrose? Yes?
he enlists his two performing friends to come on a road trip, telling them about a gig in Alice Springs without mentioning the hotel they'll be performing at is owned by his wife. They begin a 1,725 mile or 2,770 kilometer journey to the Northern Territories. As in any country, the more liberal, tolerant city atmosphere is far different from the rugged, remote towns up north, When you look up what Alice Springs is known for online, I kid you not, it just says desert landscapes. They're making this journey on a bus bought for the young, hyperactive, annoying Adam by his mother, who thinks a guy's trip up to the rugged country might help her broke gay son snap out of his sexuality.
Well, I met some nice Swedish tourists called Lars, and I coaxed it out of them for $10,000.
We can't afford it.
Well, that's right. Mummy, maybe a trip to the outback could help me get over this little phase I'm going through.
He probably names this bus Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because that's what you name your straight guy bang bus.
I hereby christen this budget Barbie camper Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
The movie takes its time letting us hang out with three of the sassiest queens in that hemisphere. Tensions quickly emerge with everyone, and it delicately allows a split between the cis gay drag queens and a post-op transgender woman who also performs as a lay girl at tense moments. They also find out that Tick is married to a cis woman whose call for help spurred this journey to the hotel she owns. Things get more and more remote and rural as they travel through Broken Hill, on the border of southern Australia, where they face some homophobic abuse, but eventually win the respect of the locals, who then vandalize Priscilla.
Could I please have a Stallion Tonic, a Bloody Mary, and a Lime Daiquiri, please?
Well, look what the cat dragged in. What have we got here, eh? A couple of showgirls, have we?
They get stuck in Simpson Desert, where they're rescued by a standoffish but friendly Aboriginal people. This creates a very progressive and interesting sequence where, after seeing an Aboriginal corroboree with song and dance, the drag queens perform I Will Survive, which the Aboriginals love and join in with to dance and play their instruments. These two cultures blend together actually pretty seamlessly. This is directly contrasted with the deeply homophobic and bigoted reaction of the white, non-Aboriginal, rural Australians to the many different scenes. The bus breaks down in a tiny town where a hippie named Bob, an outcast from his hick neighbors, tries to help fix Priscilla. Interestingly, Bob is married to the only character I think is actually pretty dehumanized and strictly played for cheap laughs, a Filipina sex worker whose own form of stage performance is an act where she gets drunk and shoots ping pong balls from her cooch. To the horror of the drag queens, Bob, played by Terrence Stamp's friend Bill Hunter, comes on the rest of the journey with the queens and becomes the new love interest of Bernadette. It's interesting that Terrence Stamp, who really steals the show here with a deeply funny and majestic portrayal of an old, fading transgender star, was anxious about the role and brought along a friend as a love interest. Bernadette is relentlessly taunted by the young, flamboyant, and deeply annoying Adam, who both dead names her and misgenders her, but gets a nice punch in the face that shuts his ass up. I think this dynamic, forget all the homosexuality and transgender aspects, is deeply relatable to any highly vocal group of friends that love to talk shit. Priscilla needs to get fixed in the mining town of Cooper Petty. This is where the most violent and harrowing episode of bigotry occurs. A drugged out Adam trying to antagonize Bob now shows up in drag at Bob's gathering of good old boys. Sorry, good old Aussies, good old mates, good old cunt. He gets in a fight with a violent, insecure redneck who assumed at first he was a woman.
Okay, fellas, let's not forget how to treat a lady.
You fucking freak!
Hold him down.
This redneck is ready to castrate him before Bob and then his friends save his ass. Something I really respect about this movie, and the writer-director Stefan Elliott would finally publicly come out as a gay man in 2012, though it was known since the 80s. At no point does it try to drive home the bigotry by killing or even severely injuring one of the three leads. This brings us finally to Alice Springs, where Tick's wife introduces him to a young son he's never met. It's not Marion, but Tick, who fears being a drag queen, a queer man, and helping raise a little boy. But Marion is a hardworking lady who needs a goddamn break. Priscilla Queen of the Desert is a rare, shining example of a queer movie that's fun, unserious, and still very much holds up today. It's also able, through three incredibly likable characters who don't take themselves too seriously, cut through a complicated and layered Australian society. From Sydney to the outback to the Northern Territories. It gives us a slice of Aussie cultural life that's both extremely Australian but also incredibly universal. I think that a good example is that the reactions in Australia and America, where Priscilla Queen of the Desert was released, were not only viewed differently in both countries, but the actual laugh lines in each culture were different. Whereas the producers claimed that the American LGBTQ community pointed to Priscilla as an example of bold queer cinema that could add mainstream acceptance of LGBTQ people, humanizing drag queens and a transgender woman, and leading to more mainstream representation. In Australia, it became the 5th highest grossing Australian, specifically, movie. A symbol of LGBTQ culture, was often hailed as a symbol of Australian culture, with audiences laughing at the Aussieisms. An American audience apparently lost it for 10 whole minutes on the Bernadette left her cake out in the rain MacArthur's Park joke. One of the last sequences shows the 3 drag queens completing a dream of Adam's from childhood and climbing up Kings Canyon in full drag regalia. Not something they're very into, and they instantly start complaining again, in a very humanistic and funny moment.
So what now?
I think I want to go home.
Me too. Well then, let's finish the shows and go home.